Well, I think one thing that helped, we were all just young kids then, 18, 20 years old. 25-year-old was considered an old man in the Air Force at that time. And I think, youngsters sometimes tend to deal with things like that a little better than adults. But we just tried not to, think about it. We had a mission to do, and that's what we were trying to do.
I want to ask you about the Japanese. During the war, I know that right now we're in a war with Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda, if you ask me my opinion of those people, I think they're crazy, lunatics. How was the sentiment towards the Japanese during the war, and how did you deal with them after the war?
Well, we were indoctrinated, in training to hate the Japanese. We were there to kill them. That was our mission, to kill them. And of course, in the process, we were hearing stories of how our men were being treated in some of the ones that were captured, especially in Bataan and Corregidor, the Philippines. What they were going through as prisoners of war, those that made it. It took quite a while after, and from time to time I still have a little feeling,
Animosity?
It's not like it was by any means, but it's...
Now, today we all have cell phones, we have email, and we're able to text people on phones. How often were you able to talk to your wife while you were in the Pacific?
Didn't. Your only communication was a letter which somebody else read before it was mailed. You had no means of communication back home other than a letter. And you couldn't even tell where you were. Oh, you could say you were in the South Pacific or something.
Wow. Was she able to send you letters?
Yes.
And when you would get those letters, would it cause you to sob?
Sometimes they were sad depending on what they were. Of course, I was fortunate. My wife was pretty upbeat on all of the letters we received. Package from home was something that was mighty nice to receive, because they get some cookies or something like that. Food wasn't the best. Air Force, of course, all of our facilities over there, most of it were tents. And we didn't have the best. They had the hash was the favorite food.
I'm going to come back to the South Pacific, but I want to jump forward to when the war was over. You flew back on what type of plane?
We came back on a B-29. Actually, I never did figure out exactly what would have happened after. We got called to headquarters late one afternoon, told we were coming home, being sent back to the States for special training, and we left the next morning. We were sent to, I believe it's Matherfield. Anyway, it was just it's in the Mojave Desert out in California. And we flew out of that bomb training, bombing missions on the desert there, really, of dropped sacks of flour and what have you for effect. Some special training there that we never did know exactly what, but I've surmised since then that in all probability we would have been sent back for an atomic mission probably. But the war was over. In fact, we finished our training like today, and the war was over tomorrow, so we didn't have to go back.
So when you came home, you flew from there
we
to...
brought a B-29 back. Yeah.
To where in North Carolina?
In California.
Okay, but how did you get from California back to Farmington?
We were given I believe it was an 11-day pass there, and I took a train, which was non-sleeper, all the way from the West Coast. Took I've forgotten, seemed like it took about between 3 and 4 days, just solid.
So where did that train, did it end up in Salisbury?
Winston-Salem.
Okay, so the train ended up in Winston-Salem. Did your wife know that you were going to be there on that particular day?
I was able to call and tell her that we would.
So was she at the train station?
Yes.
Could you share for us what that reunion was like?
I said, I beg your pardon. I did take a commercial flight from there back to Winston-Salem. And that particular trip, I was thinking about a trip from Wendover, Utah. I took the train back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got a flight back into, ended up back into Winston-Salem at Smith Reynolds Airport.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and her brother and his wife were there to pick me up. And it was quite a reunion.
Was their arms wide open?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Could you smell the aroma of the downtown tobacco plants? And
well, you couldn't be around Winston-Salem hardly without smelling that. That was a good smell at the time. I guess one of my scariest times is over Sendai, which is north of Tokyo. We went over there as on a night mission, and we went over about 6,000 feet. And we were about 2/3 of the way into the mission, our part of it. And if you can imagine Winston-Salem, I don't know what the population of Winston-Salem is now, but there's 250,000 population in that town at the time. And they virtually wiped out over 50% of it at one time. Incendiary bombs. I've got a photograph here of Yokohama, what it looked like before and after.
I'm going back to that mission. It was a nighttime mission. Were there lights on the plane down that little hallway, down that scuttle?
Everything was dark when you were on the mission. Well, I said dark. We had these camouflage lights that would not be that visible outside. But that was one time. I said it was one of the scary missions. The Japanese were very good on targeting you with searchlights.
Mm-hmm.
And we got caught in a searchlight that night, and I could have sitting in the tail of the thing. I could have read a book. It was so light in there. But we got lucky and didn't stay. I don't know whether a bomb hit it or what, but we got away from it.
How did you deal with the fact that the mission's objective was to kill?
Well, I think one thing it helped. We were all just young kids then, 18, 20 years old. 25-year-old was considered an old man in the Air Force at that time. And I think, youngsters sometimes tend to deal with things like that a little better than adults. But we just tried not to, think about it. We had a mission to do, and that's what we were trying to do.
What is your opinion of the decision to drop the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Under the circumstances, the best decision has ever been made in a war. I think of the lives on American and Japanese too. If we'd have had to invade that island at that time, they were in a mindset that they were willing to die for their country, and it's just been a slaughter, really, for us to try to invade that island. And not only for us, but for them too.
Where were you when the bombs were dropped?
I was in California.
So you had flown back.
Yeah, I was. I just finished up that month's special training that we were under. In fact, I was actually, when the war ended, I was on a bus in the way into Sacramento when the official word came that the war was over. When we got into Sacramento, that's when we knew that it actually was over, because the streets were filled with people and it was one big party that night.
I bet it was.
If you were a GI, you were on top of the world.
What would you want to tell someone who gets to watch this video 20 years from now about your experience with World War II and about your allegiance to our country?
Well, I think it makes you have a much stronger feeling for your country to be involved in those instances. It makes you appreciate your country much better. That's one thing, because until you're actually faced with somebody out there, their intent is to kill you in defense of their country as well. I feel honored, really, to had the opportunity to serve. I'm glad I had the experience, but I would not want to go through it again, even if I knew I'd come out as good as I did, because it wasn't pleasant all the time. But I think it does make you have a little more stronger appreciation for the place we live in, the freedom that we have, and you see how some of the other people have lost that ability. I'll tell you a harrowing experience with me. My first night, we was on Saipan at that night, the first night, and I was watching takeoff over on Tinian, which is just about 4 miles across the way. A plane exploded on takeoff, or crashed on takeoff, and then the ammunition and the bombs and everything went off along with it.
That'll put the fear of God in your heart.
Put the fear of God into you when you know what you may be facing. And that, unfortunately, there was a little atoll right at the end of the runway, from there into the ocean. From the end of the runway, you had to clear that hill to get into the air.
I want to tell you how much I appreciate you sharing, not only with us, but for all the people that are going to watch this video in the future, or watch this DVD in the future. And I want you to know that going with you Saturday to Washington, D.C. to witness the memorial is going to be one of the highlights of my life. And I personally want to tell you how much I appreciate your service in World War II. I think you're a hero, and I'm proud to call you a friend.
Well, I don't look at being a hero. I just did what I felt like I needed to do at the time, but I sure want to say to you that I appreciate you and all the others that are making this possible. I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. That is our interview with John Caudle, and I want to thank you for listening in, and I want to say, to end this video, be proud to be an American.